Hey folks, it's Flux here with another Sunday session, and today we're going to be talking all about strata, body corporates, and the like. So everything you do, whether you're doing a duplex, a triplex, six-pack, or you're being high-rise Harry and going all the way to the sky, the bylaws that you actually create for your tenants or your ultimate owners when they actually purchase the property. There are lots of gotchas in this space, and as developers, it's our job to set up the rules in order to get that right. So in order to do that, we've got a very special guest. We've got Amanda Farmer from your Strata property. So if I hit the right button, she'll be here. Hello, Amanda. Welcome aboard.
Hey, Rob. Thanks for having me.
So you, I guess, have your own practice, like a legal practice in this space, but equally you have an audience very similar to mine where you actually broadcast and run a community all the way around the country talking about this. So you're the best person to talk about all the different issues and challenges and problems in, I'm going to say, the different terminologies and a whole bunch. So I'm pleased to have you on board. Why don't you tell us a bit about yourself, your experience, and your Strata property?
Yeah, sure. So yes, I am a strata lawyer. I have had my own legal practice for nearly 15 years now, I think it's been. And I have focused on strata, solely strata, acting for owners corporations or body corporates, acting for developers, local councils in that space. And I also have a podcast, which is called Your Strata Property. Been running that one for close to 10 years. And that has evolved into an online membership community as well, where we support owners and managers and developers with their projects, with their investment, in order to make sure that they can live peacefully and profitably in Strata.
Wow, 10 years. That's a long time. I thought I've been running this community for 13, but the YouTube channel, I think, is only for about 5, 6, maybe. Yeah, don't go and watch show number 1, folks. It was very dodgy.
That's what I say too, yeah.
But it's up there. If anyone is, I guess, dedicated and wants to binge and get there, they will find it. Okay, so terminology is probably the first place to start. We've got a national audience here, and every single state likes to think that they're special. And so the terminology that sits behind this is just crazy. There's stratas, there's body corporates, there's owners corporations, and there's a bucket load more.
Yeah.
Why don't you do the state by state, blow by blow? What do they call it? And so when we then use the word strata, folks, and you hear your word, then you know that we're actually talking about you. So, so you're physically based in New South Wales. Let's start there.
I am, yes. So as a New South Wales lawyer, you will hear me use the term strata. That is a term that we use here. We also use the term owners corporations to describe that the group of owners that own the building, they own all the lots in the building. That's the owners corporation. In Queensland, you're going to be calling that the body corporate. You use the term owners corporation, I know, in Victoria as well, but the word strata is a bit of a mystery to you. You don't use that one. Then if we go over to WA, we're talking about strata companies. So that's the equivalent of your body corporate in WA is a strata company, which can get confusing because
you skipped poor Adelaide.
Oh, Adelaide. Oh, are we unit titles in Adelaide? I think we might be unit titles in Adelaide. We're unit titles in the ACT. Yeah, that's the confusing nature of our federated system. And, we always talk about should strata be regulated at the state and territory level, or should it be at the federal level? Well, we've always dealt with property at a state level in this country, so I can't see that changing anytime soon. So put up with the terminology difference.
We can get into a whole conversation on the politics of Australia being a federation, because the combined, I guess, powers of the states are more powerful than federal government, but that's a different issue altogether. There's one that we missed, which is a legacy one, which you won't see very often, but they do come up from time to time, and that's a company title.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so that does exist, folks. I actually quite like the old company title, but I guess where you own a unit in the complex, and by unit as in a share, and that share gives you exclusive rights. Typically, that share is only $1, which means your stamp duty is based on $1.
I find that fascinating. I've dealt a little bit with company title in my time. We've got a few older buildings, often in Sydney's eastern suburbs, that are still company title. And they can be run as a bit of a fiefdom for the company directors, because you can set rules that you can't set in strata. You are much more free to decide who comes and goes from the building, perhaps who even lives in the building, which you can't do in strata. But I didn't know this about the stamp duty. That's kind of
It's amazing. So yeah, that might be a state by state thing for sure, but I can tell you now that in Queensland that is the case, because I almost bought one way back in the day, a penthouse in a lovely old heritage, I guess, apartment complex. But that's another story.
yeah.
There's a big backstory on that one. But okay, so now that we kind of understand what we're talking about, from now on, folks, we're going to be saying the word strata, and if I guess now that you know where you live, you know what we're talking about. So lots of issues and challenges in this space, both from I guess a developer's perspective and also from I guess the ultimate owner's perspective. And we're going to try and look at both sides of things because you get to see both sides. Now, as a developer, we are typically wanting to get out of Dodge as quick as we can. We want something that's non-controversial when we set up the rules. So when prospective buyers are looking at it, they don't see anything, I guess, that is controversial. But often we leave things out that in the end, the owner, I guess, living in that 2, 3, 5 years down the track, end up having a whole bunch of problems.
Yep.
So from that side, what are the challenges that you see? We've gotten in and we've gotten out. Owners at the end, what are the challenges that they have that if we had the foresight to think about up front, we could make their world really easy?
Yeah, so I'm very glad that you fessed up nice and early here, Rob, that you and your audience, developers, just want to get out of Dodge. You just want to set it up, make it profitable, make it saleable. And this is why I love having this conversation with you now, because Strata is becoming more and more accessible, I suppose, understandable. We're talking more about it, whereas 20 years ago, it was like, oh yeah, Strata apartments, they're for tenants, they're for investors. You don't really know. People weren't buying strata to live in. They certainly weren't paying multiple millions of dollars for their apartments. They are now. A lot of media attention on strata. We've had this problems with strata managers. That is another podcast. So owners are more aware, purchasers are more aware. And what I'm seeing is that they're looking, especially when they're buying off the plan, they're getting good advice. They're looking closely at the bylaws. They're looking closely at the plan. They're looking at their rights and obligations, and they're understanding the differences between properties. So as you said, I often work at the other end, which is the litigious end. When something wrong happens in the building, there's disputes between owners, and I can be looking at plans, and they're often the small plans, whether they're townhouses or they're 3 or 4 lot plans. And I'm looking at the bylaws and I'm thinking, oh, if only the developer had done this differently, we wouldn't be having this fight. And it often comes down to what the bylaws say about access, about use of common property, about the responsibilities of owners. So here's an example. If I'm looking at a 2-lot plan, so it might be a duplex, can be quite common here in New South Wales. It is possible when you're drawing up that plan that you can make each individual owner responsible for their own bathrooms, for their own waterproofing. If you don't write that into either the plan or the bylaws at the time you're registering, then the strata law, I think across the country, not just New South Wales, is that the owner's corporation, the body corporate, is going to be responsible for that waterproofing. So if the upstairs,
because it's part of the building.
Because it's part of the building, that structure of the building. So if the upstairs next door starts leaking, it has no impact on you as the duplex next door. If you're in a multi-story, it would have impact on you, which is why we have these laws. But in a duplex, it has no impact on you. So why should you as the neighbor be responsible for contributing to the cost of fixing that waterproofing? You can put a notation on the strata plan that says each owner is responsible for their own bathroom waterproofing. It is so easy to do that, but it can only be done at that time of registering the plan. They're the kinds of things that I would love for your audience to start thinking about, because if I'm a purchaser going in and buying into a duplex or a small townhouse block like that, these are the things that my lawyer is going to be telling me to look for and say, hey, you know what? That's actually a good thing that you're responsible for the structure of your own place, because you don't want to be beholden to your neighbor or that other group, that 3 or 4 other people who might not want to raise the money and contribute. The more independent you can be in strata, I think, the better.
And just to be clear, that doesn't preclude your claim against I guess from an insurance perspective, if it's got a structural issue or that sort of thing during the initial warranties and that sort of thing. But I see that has multiple benefits. I guess if you've got a small leak, that's one thing. But in 10, 15 years time, when that bathroom's looking a little tired and you're wanting to do a refresh and all those sorts of things, now you don't need your neighbour's approval, and you don't need to have a special general meeting to actually to vote on, can I do a bathroom reno?
Yeah.
Right?
How good is that? Yeah.
How good is that?
Yeah.
So,
And this, I mean, I'm regularly educating owners who think that living in strata is like living in a small house. And it is just not, because it is a democracy. You have to get approval, as you say, for these kinds of renovations. And people, they don't know that until they're in the middle of it. So buying into a building, and this is what I'm looking for when I'm buying strata. I'm looking for, what do the bylaws say? What does the plan say that I'm responsible for? And I want to be as independent as I can and as responsible for my own space as I can, because it means I don't have to go and get those approvals. I don't have to wait for someone to sign off to fix my leaky bathroom.
yeah, you raised I guess a very topical thing. You said it's a democracy, right? People kind of forget that, and most people don't want to actually get involved in their strata management. They don't want to be on the. But if you don't, you have no idea who's in charge. If you didn't vote that person in, and you don't have control on you have no idea on the outcome. So we should be taking a lot more ownership of, I guess, what is happening, participation at minimum, have our voice heard, because there's a lot of decisions that are made at that, I guess, at that strata layer that has cost implications on you and usage implications on you and a whole bunch of other things.
Yeah, it's something that I have a personal conflict about, because as a strata lawyer, I say, I don't want to sit on my own strata committees. I don't want to knock off work to go and lay bricks. I would love to not be involved, but it's so hard to watch a group of people make the wrong decisions. I have to protect my investment. So when I get asked, Amanda, you're like, do you sit on your strata committee? So many lawyers and strata managers will say they wouldn't touch it. I say, you know what? Yeah, I do, because I have to make sure that I'm getting value. I have to make sure that silly decisions aren't being made that's going to waste my money and my neighbor's money. It's one of the things that you do sign up for in strata.
Yeah, look, and look, I'm sure that your position gives you, I guess, way extra credibility. So your vote probably influences a few other people's votes as well.
That's when you know you've bought into a good building, when the committee says, okay, Amanda, whatever you say. It's okay, great. Okay, I'm in the right place.
There you go. Okay, so you mentioned one. I guess what are some of the other things that would be really good if developers put into, I guess, their bylaws up front?
Yeah, I mean, something simple, like thinking about how you're going to regulate the keeping of pets. If you want to talk about this one, it might be a bit of a controversial topic. There's been a bit of change in legislation over the last few years. It is now in, I think, right across the nation.
It's at least 5 states and probably more.
Yeah, it is illegal for our strata buildings to be outright banning pets. And we can talk about then the relationship between landlords and tenants as well, because that's getting really hard for landlords to ban pets as well. But please, developers, please do not be putting in very old-fashioned, I can tell you, I've seen a few of these old-fashioned bylaws that ban pets. No dogs, or no more than one dog and one cat. I saw a bylaw very recently for a building in Sydney Olympic Park, big developer, big building, and the bylaw was no more than 10 fish in a tank.
Yeah.
I mean, these are out there.
So it's probably worthwhile, just for everyone else who's new to this, just to give some context here. I guess once upon a time, the residential tenancies authorities in each state didn't really have any care factor with regards to this. And so a lot of the time, these things were put in from a legacy perspective before the new laws came into place. And then slowly over time, the relevant RTAs in each state have then gone and added some of these things, which then create challenges with existing bylaws that may have been in place for 10 plus years. And for anyone new putting things out, thinking that the old ones are still workable. And so that's where we're talking about here, so firstly, what do we do if we've got old bylaws that just aren't enforceable?
Yeah, well, they should be amended. They should be amended. An owners corporation, a body corporate should be getting advice on how we amend that bylaw. And I'm not suggesting, I think that it's a bad idea to have a bylaw that just says pets are allowed, or to have no regulation about pets at all. I think you've got to say something about pets. And the bylaw that I usually recommend is that it's pets on application. So if you want to keep a pet, you make an application. That application cannot be unreasonably refused. And if you are approved to keep a pet, these are the conditions that need to be complied with. You know, you look after your animal, you don't let it off the lead on common property, you clean up after it, all of that stuff. So that if there's a problem, then you've got a bylaw, a rule in place that can be enforced. And I'm suggesting that developers put these types of bylaws, pets on application, bylaws in place on registration of the plan. And a purchaser is going to be looking, you know, we've got that furry family member that we want to bring with us. Are we allowed to keep them? Oh, great. Look, we can make an application. That all sounds pretty reasonable.
So my Great Dane in my one bedroom bed sit is that's perfectly acceptable.
Well, this is the thing. You know, apparently big dogs are great. Big dogs are great for apartments, but
Because they're lazy. They don't want to get up.
you got it. You don't want the
They don't bark at everything. That's
right. And this is the thing about Strata. We regulate what our neighbors do because we can, right? And then we have this concept that, oh, well, if the dog is barking, then we can deal with that, or this dog is not appropriate for this apartment, so that's a problem, they have to go. In any other property, you know, a freestanding property, what somebody does in their own home is a matter for them. But in Strata, you can have these weird and wacky bylaws that say, well, you can't, but you can try to have these bylaws.
So people think they can, yeah.
People think they can, and have this mentality of, I can regulate what my neighbor does. Well, the law is that no, you can't, unless their behavior is impacting somebody else, is unreasonably impacting someone else. Then you can. So that you can deal with noise if the noise is disturbing someone's peaceful enjoyment. You can deal with the impact of the pet. You can't just say no to the pet's existence.
And hence, I guess the suggestion is put your bylaws to measure the impact, not control the action, but control the impact of the action.
Yep, you've got it. That's a great summary. Yeah.
Any others that I guess may have come through the RTA that you know that previously weren't an issue but suddenly are?
Yeah, I think if we're talking about tenancies, we need to have a think about leasing, subleasing, and maybe short-term letting. This might be
Airbnb and that sort of thing.
Airbnb comes up for your audience. So definitely we have changes to strata law across the country that allow our body corporates to regulate short-term letting, and indeed to ban short-term letting for investor owners. So it is possible to have a bylaw that says, unless this is your principal place of residence, you cannot short-term let. So our strata legislation allows that. And then we have to have a think about what the state planning legislation might say about Airbnb and short-term letting as well, restrictions on how many nights and things like that.
Yeah, so it's both state and local government. So the state might say one thing, but your local council might say something else. And so there are so many permutations on this, it's not funny. That the fact that I say go and check your local town planner, I cannot stress enough. But you might find that two councils side by side, one will allow, one won't. One will require you to register it just through a self-declaration. The other one wants a full development application. So the permutations on this are incredible. The number of people who just go and list on places like Airbnb and they don't check all of that, and then they wonder why they get a tap on the door and a very large fine. I guess you want to check state government, local government, and your strata. Make sure that they are all in alignment, and then whether or not the deal makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So there, I guess some of the legacy things the RTAs have enforced upon us and that sort of thing. What about some of the other little challenges that you might still see from that running of it side of things?
Yeah. So common property and how that common property is used by owners. So when I say common property, those are our shared spaces on the site. So our shared gardens, sometimes our parking areas can be common property, that entrance foyer, the stairwell. Do we have a pool? Do we have a gym? We really want to be thinking early on about how those spaces are first of all, planned out, and where you might be able to get some value from the common property. So you can register with the strata plan bylaws that give particular owners the exclusive use or the right to use an area of the common property. So we see this with courtyards, garden areas, with parking. This part of the plan might not be on the title to the lot, but there's a bylaw registered that allows the lot owner to use this area exclusively. And that can, we see developers doing that where they want to add a lot of value to a particular lot. Maybe it's the lot that they want to retain. Maybe it's the one that they want to give to their sister-in-law, or it's the one that they really want to make a profit on. That can be done quite strategically. And this is where your expert advisors, your strata managers you're working with, your strata lawyers that I suggest you should be working with, can help you set those things up, because the key is these types of bylaws have to be registered with the plan early on. You can't make these bylaws later down the track. You can, but you need consent, and it all gets a little bit messy. So spend the time mapping out where we're going to have these value adds. Are we going to give the penthouse owner the exclusive use of the rooftop because that's a gorgeous view and we know we're going to make a mozza on that? If we're going to do that, let's put it into a carefully drafted bylaw, but we've also got to think about access. What if the owner's corporation, the body corporate, needs access to the roof to access utilities and facilities,
air conditioning and lift maintenance and
correct. Yeah. So I've been involved in cases before, and it blows my mind. It's like, surely someone should have thought of this, where the penthouse owner is saying, no, you can't come up here. I don't want you up here on my property. And we think, well, we've got to get up to fix the lift motor room. So we end up in the tribunal with a dispute over that. It's great for the strata lawyers, but not great for the owners. We can be solving all of these problems with well-drafted documents early on.
Yeah, and I guess there's other elements, like it might be exclusive use of an open air car park on the ground floor, for example, and it says, well, that's for unit 2, and it says that in the bylaw, but how many times is there no sign at the front of that going, this is reserved for unit 2, right?
Oh, there's never a sign. I love the idea of a sign. Please, give me something.
Which then means that, of course, somebody else is going to park in it because they didn't read the bylaws. Nobody reads the bylaw. I don't read the instructions for my IKEA furniture. Why would I read bylaws? Like it? So it's a common thing where people just assume, and then that creates conflict. And but equally, you don't want signs everywhere. And so it's the balancing act, folks, to actually not have too much use of, but make things easy and clear.
Yeah, and I do think, down the track, I know your developer may be long gone, but down the track, you've got sales agents who are saying, yes, of course you have that storage cage. And I've had cases where I've had purchasers come in and go, there's all this crap in my storage cage. This is not mine. Why is this here? Can I move this? And there's a dispute because Unit 5 has been using Unit 2's storage cage for the last 10 years. It happens all the time.
Yeah. Put signs on it, folks, or
I like that idea.
Put it on the map, folks. Make it really, really, really clear. Okay, so from a developer's perspective, right? So we've taken the owner's perspective. Now, from a developer's perspective, I'll tell you a typical developer's journey. Now, this shouldn't be the journey, but this is what they typically do. They go, oh, I need to write up all these bylaws. I'm going to go talk to my current solicitor, who may or may not be a strata expert. And he might claim to be able to write them and that sort of thing. But if he's not an expert, he'll say that he is because he would like the revenue from it. So if you go and engage that, there's a fee involved and you don't know the outcome. Usually developers don't like fees because we're trying to get profitability. So then we go, well, is there a better way to do that where we can get that for free? And then we find that the strata management companies will often offer a service where we'll write it up for you for free on the condition that we get the first year or first 3 years, depending upon the state, of the management rights, because they know that once they're in charge of the AGM, the likelihood of them voting themselves out is pretty low. And so we can get these free services, but quite often the developer just goes, rightio, go write it.
Mm.
And because we don't know what to put in there, and we don't know how to measure whether or not it's a good or bad one.
Yeah.
So how do we avoid, well, if firstly, I'm happy for paying is good, but how do we work out who should we be paying,
Mm.
and what is I guess an appropriate measure that's good value? Or if we go get a free one, how do we work out whether or not the free one is actually fit for purpose?
Yeah. Such a juicy question. There's a lot there. First of all, I want to say that I think it's a good thing that developers build partnerships with strata managers early on in the piece. This question of whether that service should be provided by the strata manager for free in return for getting the first year's contract. That there's been a fair bit of publicity around that and criticism, especially in New South Wales, when we're looking at the professionalism and integrity of strata managers. So just be alert to that is what I'm going to say. Be alert to that. But it's complex, in each state. And I think New South Wales is probably the most heavily regulated. There are a lot of hoops you need to be jumping through to be compliant when you're registering the plan, when you're in those first few months before you've sold off a majority of the lots, when you've got to set up the levies, when you've got to set up the maintenance schedule, when you need insurances in place. And strata managers are good. A strata management company that is used to working with new buildings and working with developers, they're going to be able to help you cover all of that off. So yes, they may have a template pack of bylaws that they're suggesting for you. I would be asking them, are they working with a strata lawyer? Who do they work with to assist them to draft these bylaws and make sure that these bylaws are relevant to the building? So any strata lawyer who's working on these bylaws should be looking at the plan, should be talking to you, the developer, about the site, and should be going out and having a look at the site. Because, a picture's worth 1,000 words. And the number of times I've been to a site with a client, whether it's a new build, whether it's something older and we're in litigation about a particular dispute, what I then pick up from seeing on site, I'll say, hang on, what about that? What about that window? What about that courtyard area? Who's responsible for this front garden here? We better put that in the bylaws. So doing that walk around. And I hear you. I hear that costs more money. But remember what I said about purchasers becoming more savvy. And they are now, instead of engaging conveyancers, they're engaging strata lawyers to advise them on that purchase contract. And they're looking at these responsibilities in the bylaws. And it's going to be pretty clear to a lawyer when they're looking at bylaws to say, hang on, this is just a template that is helpful for a six-pack down the road, but it is not suitable for your multi-story with your pool and your gym. How are these things going to be regulated? This is a recipe for disaster. I think you've got to be prepared for that conversation.
Yeah, and I guess the key thing is a template may or may not be fit for purpose. Has a template to start with is fine, but what is the customization that is fit for your specific project, and how and when do we need to tweak that, and not just have the pure template side of things.
Yeah, and I think if you've got a strata manager or a lawyer telling you, I can throw this in, or this is free, or this is the standard one that I use, I would have some alarm bells going off. I can speak to New South Wales. There's some new legislation that's coming in from the 1st of April next year, where there are some pretty onerous obligations on developers to put together documents on registration of the plan, to have what they call an initial maintenance schedule that's signed off by a quantity surveyor to make sure you've properly costed what your first year's expenses are going to be. If you don't do these things properly, you're actually subject to penalties. There will be penalties. So where you're working with a lawyer or a strata manager who's just doing everything on the cheap, I'd be thinking, what don't they know and what are they not telling me about my legal obligations? And is that then going to expose me to penalty down the track? So, as much as we want to be saleable and we want to have great documents for our purchases, I think you can have a bit of self-interest here as well to say, I've got to make sure I'm getting good advice, because this landscape is only becoming more complex from a legal perspective.
That's our entire world. There's more and more legislation coming in everywhere.
Yeah.
They never take one out. They only just add one on. Okay, so I guess assuming that we've got a good set of bylaws and that somebody's actually customized them and that sort of thing, that's not the end of the process. So there's a whole bunch of things, and you kind of touched on them very quickly, but let's kind of break them down. There's a whole bunch of gotchas with regards to, I guess, the handover. So I've created this. I'm now handing this over to now our new owners. And there's a whole bunch of processes that we need to go through, and I guess a checklist of things that we need to make sure that are in place.
Yeah.
Because right now I own all of it.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And so if I don't like my bylaw, it's me that's listening to me, right? But as soon as I give it to you, Amanda, then I've got obligations in how that handover happens.
Yeah, I love the way that you frame that, and I love that you use the term handover. And I want you to have the audience to have this picture of handing something over with care, with pride, with generosity, not just flick and forget.
Handball it.
Yeah, take it off me. Let's start from registration of the plan. That is when the owner's corporation or the body corporate as a legal entity is created. So if we shift our mindset to think, okay, I've registered this strata plan, that now means that I have given birth to this entity, which is not me. It's not me anymore. I'm not the owner of the block. The owner of the block is the owner's corporation strata plan number 10,500, whatever it is. Same across the country. So I've had developers who said to me before, "Oh, Amanda, the owners corporation doesn't exist. There's no owners. I own everything. There is no owners corporation." And I go, "Hey, well, there's a registered strata plan." Yes, then the owner's corporation exists. And that means you need to have insurances in place. That's the main one, because your construction insurances will come to an end. You need to make sure that you've got your body corporate insurances in place, legally required to have those. That you you should have that engagement of the manager. I suggest the strata manager in place who's going to help you, remind you of all of these obligations. There are expenses for the building. You're going to have running costs. You're going to have utilities costs. You've got that insurance premium to pay. Even though you may own all of the lots, owner's corporation or body corporate is the one who's responsible for paying those. So have you got those contracts, service contracts in place for the rubbish room,
the gardener, the electricals for the lights in the garden, the refuse collection, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, all of that in place. And I think sometimes, that's thinking about that up front. This is all part of working out whether your development is feasible. Okay. So sometimes when we're building strata, we're not thinking about what are the management fees going to be. I'm going to be responsible for the body corporate insurances. If I'm going to hold the majority of lots for a period of time, and you may not know, we're wishful thinking we're going to get rid of them, but maybe not, I'm going to be left holding these expenses and these running costs. So that needs to be factored in to your planning ahead of time to make sure that this development is actually feasible. In all our states, we have a period of time where the developer retains control, and we call that, at least in New South Wales, we call that the initial period. And the initial period lasts until a third of the lots have been sold off to other purchasers. And then within 2 months of that happening, we have to hold our first AGM. And that is where you're really going to tap into that strata management expertise to make sure that you have all the right documents together. This is where the official handover happens. All of your maintenance schedules, all of your planning, all of your warranties, all of your contracts need to be handed over officially to the owners. You elect a strata committee. You have those levies set up and put in place. You confirm your contracts. And I think you already touched on this briefly, Rob. I can tell you're in the know because you said something like, some of these contracts can only last for a year. Some of them can only last for 3 years. In New South Wales, when we get to that first AGM, we need to be entering into new strata management contracts and utilities contracts. We can't be binding our owners long-term to those contracts while we're still in that initial period. So it's complicated. It's a complicated process.
Absolutely. So then there's the, we're not selling everything. We want to keep something. So we are both the developer and the owner at the end. What are the things we want to think about in that instance?
You want to think about your responsibility for original building defects. I know we might be a bit of a dirty subject, but I think we need to acknowledge that there are going to be there's statutory warranty period. We need to be aware that we're going to have to be dealing with that. And in dealing with that, if we're still owning a majority of lots, we've got a bit of a conflict of interest there, and we need to be aware of that. There is some legislation that acknowledges that. So in New South Wales, where the developer still owns more than half of the lots, their voting rights are actually reduced at general meetings. A developer also can't vote on issues that relate to original building defects. So this is where we can start to have some conflicts between owners. And, every situation is going to be different. Some things might be able to be fixed quickly, some things not so much. But just being aware that if we're going to stay in for a while, we may have to be wearing two hats, and just be conscious of how we balance those interests.
And all of those points being valid, I'll add some real world lived experience to this, that as the developer, you are deemed to be the one who caused, in legal speak, the building works to be done by the builder at, I guess, so I determined, is it a budget builder? Is it an expensive builder? Are they good quality, etc.? And so whilst you might be buying that off me and you get protected by your 6-year statutory homeowners warranty insurance, myself as the developer am not protected, because I don't get homeowners warranty insurance on the building that I built. So there's some challenges there with regards to, one, your claim against me, but also my obligations in that regard for my own property. Now, in my instance, I found out the hard way because my building was the only one that had a roof leak. And so I didn't have a claim against the Strata, and I didn't have a claim against the homeowners warranty insurance or anybody, because it was me that did it.
Yeah.
Right? So note, if you are keeping things, folks, have a long, hard look at the entity that you intend to keep it in, and is it worthwhile flipping the entity from a development entity into an owning entity? Yes, there's some challenges with regards to the costs with regards to that, but you get a whole bunch of protections, both from your voting rights perspective and also from your own claims against your own things. So I guess have a think about that. Go chat to your lawyer. So
yeah, and this is where, spending a little bit of money on legal advice, and I don't do this to drum up work for myself. This is not the bread and butter of the work that I do these days. But it does, it's spending a little bit now can save you a lot down the track.
Yeah. So and trust me, when you're reliant on someone else to do the work, this is why being on the board and voting is super important. The repairs for that roof took about 2 years. Even voting its way through, it's painful. You want to have control if you can.
Yeah, I think it's well received by owners when the developer is still around and has an interest and is actively engaging. I think Opal Tower in Sydney is a good example of this, where this was one of those buildings, not Mascot Towers, but Opal Tower, that was also evacuated because of concerns, and the developer was still around, and it all got dealt with pretty quickly. We all know the name of it, but it wasn't this ongoing saga that Mascot Towers then became, being an 11-year-old building, and that developer came out okay, I think, from that particular saga. So being there, being engaged, being involved, being responsive, of course, meeting your legal obligations, really important.
Yeah. And so look, we've covered a lot from I guess the what to do if we need it. We probably skipped right at the very start, so hopefully everyone hung around for this bit. How do we even know when we need to put a strata in place? So a lot of people, for example, doing a very, very simple duplex, they might think that when they separate that they are going to be on their own individual titles. Therefore, a strata may or may not be required, and so they, I guess, they use the terminology Torrens titles, and so they use the terminology, I'm going to Torrens title these, and so there won't be a strata in place. So how do we know for sure that that's the case?
Yeah. So thank you for this opportunity to clear up a bit of a misconception, a bit of a pet peeve among lawyers, when it's usually real estate agents, I find, who say, oh, it's not strata, it's Torrens. Like that's a selling point. the fact is that strata is torrens. Torrens is a system of land registration in Australia. We register our properties on the Torrens Title Register. Every modern property is registered on the Torrens Title Register. So just a little aside.
Invented by some dude called Mr. Torrens
Mr. Torrens.
in South Australia. It's gone global, folks.
You got it. Capital
yeah.
T.
Yeah.
So strata is torrens, and we do struggle to say, how do you define something that's not strata? And I tend to say a freestanding home. If we've got a freestanding home that's not strata, that's sort of how I talk to public and media about it. But yeah, in terms of these duplexes, it's a great point, because purchasers often don't realize they're buying into a 2-lot strata plan. It's a duplex. They don't realize it's a strata plan. A sales agent doesn't tell them. In my experience working with local government, often it's a requirement. It can be a requirement of a particular local council because of their planning instruments that a small block must be strata titled. In some local government areas, even they're still doing company title. And I think because of the size of the block, the land, whatever their requirements are, it cannot be 2 separate titles. It has to be a strata title. So that's going to be something that you want to do some investigating of. And I know the idea is, I mean, you tell me, Rob, you're the expert in this space, but you prefer not to do strata and not to have to deal with all of this if you don't have to.
So it's a marketing perception. If they believe that there's no strata in place and then there's no ongoing, I guess, fees and associated with that, then the value of the sale price is much higher.
Right.
And so you do everything humanly possible to not have shared services. So 2 individual water meters in 2 different locations, 2 electrical boxes in different places, different driveways.
Good.
So everything we do is separated so that there's no shared anything. There's no shared bin spaces if we can.
Love it.
The moment there's anything shared, like, it's a mandatory that there's going to have to be something.
Yeah.
But having said all of that, we can separate as much as we can, but we still have a shared boundary wall and a shared roof line.
Yep.
Where do we sit?
Yeah, I mean, you can, if you don't have strata, you can deal with that with easements and rights registered that way. But in terms of, I always say, if we're subdividing airspace, we're wanting to subdivide airspace, we want to do a multi-layered scheme, then you're going to be dealing with some kind of strata title subdivision, or what the word we haven't used yet is community title and community title subdivisions.
I was coming back to that.
Yeah, great. So, once you're in that area and you've nailed it, where we've got shared facilities, and these can get kind of complicated when we're dealing with, commercial and residential, and we might be having some services that are just for the commercial. We might be having a common ventilation system. We might have a common parking area. Then absolutely, we have to have some rules and some agreements around how we manage those shared facilities. We have documents, whether they be bylaws or management statements, around how we manage and share and pay for and contribute to the cost of paying for those facilities. And therein, the whole body of strata and community titles law arises and regulates all of that.
So having said all of that, in very, very simple lay speak, if we've been able to separate everything, it's still technically a strata, but there might not be, it's kind of a low maintenance strata, let's just say. So you might not have to have a regular AGM. You might not need to have pay maintenance fees because there's nothing to maintain.
Yeah. So in terms of, if we think about it, maybe a townhouse development where we actually have separate buildings, and maybe the only thing that's really shared is that driveway to enter into the development. Maybe we've been good enough to be able to separate all of the services. That's perfect. And where you can have notations on the strata plan, and this is up to you and your surveyor who's drawing the strata plan, to say, draw the plan in such a way that each owner owns the structure of their townhouse. So they look after their walls, they look after their roof, they look after their bathroom waterproofing.
They can make it pink with purple polka dots.
Absolutely. Yep. You can do that if you like as well. You can write all of that in and have a very simple simple strata plan. And then if everybody's looking after their own maintenance, then yes, your budget for your capital works fund, or your sinking fund, as you call it, is going to be very low. And when I'm looking at 2-lot plans, it is often just the insurance premium. It's just the insurance premium, because you've got to have that building insurance by law that is budgeted for. That's all we have to pay for. And we don't even end up setting up a bank account for that, because everybody just pitches in when it comes time to pay it. So I love the simplicity. Not always possible, though.
No. Which then kind of blends into, and you threw the word out there, community title. What is the difference or the distinction between a, I guess, strata plan and a community title plan?
Yeah. So often we will see a community association, we call it. A community association is the umbrella organization that then underneath the community association, we can have various different strata plans. So we see this in large scale developments where the developer might want to have different property types on offer. So you might want to have strata units in strata buildings. You might want to have freestanding houses. Everyone then shares the common pool. And, in our big developments, I'm thinking of Breakfast Point in Sydney, Jackson's Landing in Pyrmont in Sydney. You might have the country club and the community hall. All of those community facilities are managed by the community association. That's the umbrella organization. Then you can have various strata plans. I think in Jackson's Landing, they've got about 18 strata plans that each contribute. The strata plans contribute to the community cost of the community facilities. And then you can have houses within that community that are on development lots. They're not strata title, but they are a lot in the community association, and they need to pay a contribution to the community association for their use of those community facilities as well.
Yeah. So, and as you said, it can be quite large. Where I tend to see it most commonly used would be, I guess, larger land subdivision type, look and feel. So the road might be a shared road, those sorts of things. By doing that, it doesn't necessarily need to be built to council standard, the road. And so that way they can be slightly smaller roads, slightly cheaper to build, that sort of thing. So it's a good way for a developer to kind of roll that out. I can give examples in Queensland, a place called Mount Omni. The entire suburb is community title, and every single road in there is actually owned by, the community title itself. So they're not council roads.
And it's a great way for council to relieve itself of responsibility for those public services.
Yeah, there's also one in Sydney, Stanhope Gardens. So they've got a lot of, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, where there's a clubhouse and a tennis court and a swimming pool, and you're contributing to that community in order to participate in that. So there's a number of things like that do exist, but they are the larger scale typically. But you can do it on a smaller scale. I've seen it done on 4-packs and 6-packs and that sort of thing as well. So try to reduce the amount of shared services, folks, to something that's very, very, very manageable.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. That's been a great wrap up, Amanda.
That's a lot, isn't it?
Is there anything that we've missed? What have we not covered today?
Oh, look, I just think this overarching point about the developers' ongoing interest and ongoing responsibility, I think times are changing, and I just want to make that super clear from my perspective of working with owners at that other end of things, and even purchasers who have just bought in and then have said, what the heck have I just bought into? If you're concerned about your reputation, and if this is a gig you want to be having, you want to be involved in property development for the foreseeable future, and you want to be involved in strata, I think focusing on that quality build, focusing on and investing in good advice, having the foresight to understand the impact, the future impact of what you're doing, whether it's with pets bylaws, whether it's with the structure of the strata plan and how you set out those shared services, and having that mentality of, if I was staying, if I was an owner in this community, how would I want to live? How would I want to use this? What would the impact be? And can I lessen the load, lighten the load now through my documents? I think if you got the foresight to think that way, then you're going to put yourself and your business, that's what this is, in good stead.
Very good. Good wrap up. Now, there is one question that's just popped into my head. For those of us who, I guess, want to build and keep absolutely everything, but give ourselves the flexibility that at some point in the future, we may want to strata them. So if we keep them all on one title, let's just say I'm doing a 6-pack, and I want to keep them on one title because it reduces my rates and my land tax and a couple of other things. But eventually, 5, 10, 15 years' time, I might want to sell down a couple. What's the best way I could set myself up to prepare for that? Because I remember in the old days, lots of Greek and Italian, I guess, developers would actually do everything. They'd keep the lot.
Yeah.
Right? And then 20 years later, you're buying these complexes and then wanting to carve them up. How do we make sure we set that up right?
Yeah, I think exactly what we were talking about earlier, having these facilities as separate as possible, whether it's your metering, metering's a big one, gas and water, making sure that that's attached to each unit, making sure that you have access, proper access for each unit, that you have car spaces that are easily allocated. Thinking practically that if this was going to be a strata building in the future and we wanted to sell this particular apartment with this car space, are we going to be able to access that apartment? Are we going to be able to have fire services that are going to be compliant for that apartment? Are we going to be able to sell that car space with that lot? And, I keep coming back to local council because this is where I see people get unstuck, making sure that that's going to be possible, that that the local council is going to approve that kind of DA, which might be a bit hard to predict that far in advance.
Yeah, well, so the laws of today might say yes,
Mm.
but I guess the laws of the future may not. So,
Yep.
so I guess you've got to kind of think about: are we increasing our car parking requirements or reducing them?
Yeah.
Those sorts of things. Now, I'd like to think reducing as we start to get autonomous cars and that sort of thing, but who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm even thinking, now you've raised it, I'm thinking about, these gorgeous old properties in, Sydney's Darling Point and places like that. And they can often be terraces. And I've seen them strata titled in, say, the 1980s. They were built in the late 19th century, but they're strata titled in the 1980s. And we end up having issues about access, about, who has the ability to access the pool that's right at the back behind lot number 3, but lot number 1 that's at the front on the road. How do they get in and out of that? Are the stairs safe? Is there privacy? Is there privacy for the lot that's down the back near the pool? Those are the kinds of issues that I see come up when we have those quite older buildings strata titled down the track.
And what's the obligation with regards to, because they were built legally in the day based on the construction laws of the day. What's the obligation to bring them up to, I guess, the current National Construction Code?
Yeah, I mean, once you're putting in that DA and you're going to be seeking approval, then council's going to put those conditions on you that you need to, particularly when it comes to fire safety. And that's very, very strict now in strata for obvious reasons and good reasons. Having to bring those up to code, I think you're going to have to be prepared to spend the money on that.
So make sure you're budgeting that in your FISO. So there could be all sorts of things. So fire compliance is one, but there could be electrical safety standards. There could be energy efficiency ratings. There could be a few things. It was legal back then and will stay legal in its current condition right now. But as soon as you change its material change of use, then they get to reapply the laws again.
Yep, that's it.
There you go. So final piece of advice, Amanda, for anyone from a developer's perspective who I guess isn't quite sure, what should they do? Should they be talking to their local lawyer? Should they talk to their potential strata manager? what's the best place to go to get the best advice?
Yeah, look, I think starting with a strata manager who is familiar with and very experienced in new developments and working with developers, and you'll find them. You'll find them out there. There's the big companies that specialize in this stuff, and then making sure that they have a good strata lawyer who they can recommend, or that they are working with, or may even have on their team, so that they can get you set up on the right path from the beginning. You cannot start thinking early enough about all of this stuff. And I know, Rob, we have a limited time, but there's a lot that we could continue to talk about. This is just the surface.
Absolutely. So thank you very much for your time, Amanda. Now, folks, if you're new to our community, we don't only run these Sunday sessions here, but we also run physical events all the way around the country. So we run these in Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, and Adelaide. We get industry experts on all sorts of topics, talking about all sorts of things. Plus, we get members of our community sharing real journeys, real stories about the scars, the battles, and the trials and tribulations of their own deal. If you want to learn all about that, plus hang around for a couple of beverages at the end, come to one of our events. We also live stream them. So if you can't physically get to them, you can dial in from anywhere in the country. So Amanda, thank you very much for your assistance today. It's been a pleasure again. I forgot to mention, we had you on like 3+ years ago. So people can go back and actually have a look at the old episode as well. So thank you. Been a pleasure.
Thanks for having me, Rob. Thanks, everybody.
No worries. See you, folks. Bye.